Well, no, because now you're butt naked in my mind, and that's not a good thing.
Again, I can be whatever you want me to be in your mind, Sam. It's really your domain, you know?
I'm the master of my domain.
I suppose I should kick us off with a humble apology and correction. In my extensive research, which took many, many days, I picked up the wrong image for Predator. And what I actually did was went on, I think, Craig Danby's Instagram and found a robot that's way cooler than Predator. Because we've now seen Predator, and it's essentially Foxic with a bad paint job.
That is disappointing.
Actually, have you seen Predator?
I have not, I'm sorry.
I feel like I've just coloured your judgment of it, but I would like you to take a look and see what you make of this colour scheme.
Okay.
Because obviously aesthetics are everything for you.
Not everything.
They're everything. They're all you care about.
How do I feel about that? It works less because it's like, you think of because it's still Foxic, right? That robot just looks like the body of Foxic.
I'm sure that in legal terms it's an entirely separate robot.
Yeah, so legally distinct, but it is Foxic, right? And orange is the only colour that you can paint that and have it make sense, I think. So, but I don't like I like this colour scheme better, but I think it's the wrong one for this robot.
I love the idea of this colour scheme. I'm just not sure it's working. It's not quite contrasty enough. It looks like it's been left in the sun and used to be a much better paint job.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the design changes physically. The wheel guards look amazing. The lower jaw on the lifter, really cool. Everything about it I still love because it's basically Foxic, and that's a robot that I adore. And also, if this does well, it'll finally shut you up.
Will it now? Because it's legally distinct from Foxic, so I'll still complain about until I see Foxic win something. This isn't Foxic.
Yeah, that could be problematic. I wouldn't hold your breath for that, you know? But no, it looks like a really good machine. The colour scheme's not to my taste, but who knows how it's going to look under studio lights instead of this quite randomly snapped image of it.
Yeah. Who knows?
So yeah, that is the entirety of Follow-Up. Over to you to explain what the hell is going on.
So, in this episode, tonight, you can, what we're going to do, we're going to quickly cover some, like, robot stuff, and then we're going to talk about some films.
Some robot films. Robot combat in the movies kind of deal.
Yeah, okay. You can oversell it like that if you want.
I love to oversell things. It's my whole deal.
Shall we start with ClashBots and This Is Fighting Robots / KOB 1.5?
I don't like being negative.
I shall start because I have no problem with it. Well, I say that. So I've tried to watch ClashBots. I think I watched about 40 minutes of it or so, I think, before concluding that it was a waste of my time and haven't watched any more since.
I was trying to coax you through that episode, and I felt bad doing it, but I thought it was for your own good. And if you'd stayed on for one more fight, you would have seen probably the best fight of the series. Well, the most spectacular death of the series. And you denied yourself that. So I'm a little sad for you, but I definitely don't blame you for seeing the whole thing as a colossal waste of life.
It's just...
Your life, not general life.
Well, I would argue that it's a colossal waste of general life, but, you know.
There have been some reasonable fights. We've had 4 episodes so far. Obviously, the whole celebrities driving thing was disastrous. Some of the robots are admittedly terrible, but there's also a lot in there that are pretty good. And I particularly liked what they did in episode 4, which a lot of people seem to think that episode 4 was a big improvement. I didn't necessarily agree with that, but they had a sort of cooperative game instead of just fighting. So they had 2 house robots built, and they had this weird little tower in the middle of the arena that was welded to the floor. And the idea was that they had to break it enough for it to fall over. And I thought that was quite a nice little break from just one-on-one fights.
So there's a couple of sort of things that compound here with ClashBots that mean I don't think I'm going to watch any more of it, which is that it is in Chinese and I don't understand Chinese, and it's really hard to watch something that is Like, if this were in English, I would struggle to watch it. I think I'd probably battle my way through one just so I can say I finished one, but because I don't understand anything and I've got no idea what's going on, it's like, well, I'm just watching fights that I think are boring, surrounded by a load of guff that I wouldn't enjoy in English that I don't understand. So it's and you know, there are so many other things in the world that I'd rather be watching or doing. So yeah, I watched 40 minutes. I wouldn't have watched. I think I would have stopped after 5 or 10 if we weren't chatting at the time. But, so I definitely got further than I would otherwise have done because of your coaxing. But it's just not. The thing is, it's not wraparound bad enough for me to put myself through it. So.
Yeah, it doesn't cross that point of so bad it's good.
No, it's not what's at the Maryland point, right?
That's the one. Yeah, I was trying not to go there, but you went there.
I've done it.
You are now officially there. I mean, I don't know if I've expressed this on here before. I think I kind of did with King of Bots a bit, and I will with This Is Fighting Robots as well. The thing we have to remember is that none of this is for us. And that was true with King of Bots anyway, in terms of it wasn't for a British audience or a Western audience in general. This not only isn't for a Western audience, it's not for our age group, and it's not for people that already like fighting robots. This is something where the celebrities are the draw and the fighting robots are kind of secondary.
Yeah.
And the inconsistency that I'm getting slightly annoyed by and feel bad that I kind of help contribute to in a way with some of the jokes that I'm more than willing to make about it is that people are absolutely panning it for not being what they wanted. But actually, this is a show that could get a significant number of young people in China more interested in engineering. And that's the thing that we were all saying was being lost when Robot Wars got taken off of the air. So we're up in arms when we lose it being done our way, but when it's being done somewhere else, a different way, we're very quick to dismiss it, and I don't think that's quite fair.
I think that's very human, but yes, I agree. It's probably not fair.
Yeah, it isn't how we would have made it, but we kind of buggered up our chance to make it by it getting cancelled.
I mean, what is this we? What is this we?
It was entirely our fault, didn't you know?
We've had nothing to do with it.
Producers were online one day, they're already feeling a bit pressured, by the expectations. Then they went, oh God, we can make podcasts about this. This is too much for us. Hit the big red button, the cancel button.
I think that we were doing our part to sort of encourage them to keep going, We're sort of showing engagement in a show. I mean, how many shows can you say have enough engagement for an audience that people decide they're going to dedicate a podcast to it?
That's an interesting point in itself. I think it isn't about the size of show, it's about the topic of the show. So something like Robot Wars, you've got a lot of tech-savvy people watching it who are the kind of tech-savvy people that might then go and create something based on it. I think the reason that we have or don't have podcasts for, say, I'm trying to think of something that won't be too offensive to people here, The Bill, if that's even a TV programme you remember. I've just realised that's quite a dated reference.
Is The Bill like some... I don't even know.
It was
what
an
it's
old
about.
sort of... It was like a soap, but a crime drama.
I think a soap is a bad example of where you're going with this. I think if you went with something that's also something like the Bake Off, right, which has got a huge audience, and
I guarantee there are podcasts about that.
I'm sure there are, but something like that, but smaller, maybe.
Well, the Great British Sewing Bee? I don't know. You're making me go specific now. It's not what I was... Actually, it is what I was doing.
It's exactly what you were doing.
But I was going funny specific.
Okay, carry on with your analogy with The Bill.
There are going to be a lot of shows that are more popular than this, but the audience aren't the sort of people that are going to be interested in making a podcast. That's what I'm trying to say, but I'm trying to say it without just saying people that watch other things are stupid. Because that's not what I actually think, but it's what it might sound like, I think.
I don't know, man. I think you grossly underestimate what people do when they like something. And like you go on a YouTube and you can find like long, really in-depth reviews about plastic garden chairs. So, people get really into anything and they will make stuff about it. I'm sure there are people that are really into The Bill and have podcasts and video essays breaking down every episode scene by scene.
I'm just looking for... Okay, it exists. There is a podcast for The Bill. I chose very wrong.
I think you could pick anything and there'd be a podcast about it.
Okay, so bad example. Bad point in general, quite possibly, but definitely a bad example. I am shamed.
We got to pot the stack a few times. Where were we? What were we doing?
Link to the Bill podcast in the show notes, by the way. I'm going to give that a go now. Final question, I suppose, for ClashBots. Are we going to be doing any cover of it?
I mean, if you want to talk at me about it, then you're welcome to. But I would not anticipate coverage of it beyond what we've just done.
I completely agree. I'm happy to watch it. I'm enjoying watching it, mostly from a slight freak show angle, I'll be honest. But there are some good elements to it, but it's nothing that we could cover if we even wanted. I think we've got so little information about it. It's just not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
This is Fighting Robots. Have you watched it yet?
I have attempted to watch the first episode, and I did not get very far because once again there was a whole lot of guff at the beginning. I'm given to understand that that's not the case in episode 2. I watched the first fight in the first episode and could not bear the way that was edited. What I've learned is that I am far more sensitive to jump cuts and randomly changing things and slow-mo than I thought I was. I learned it watching that. I was watching some YouTube video earlier today. It was a vlogger who shall not be named, and the jump cuts were just too much. And so
I want to know what vlogger you were watching, even if it doesn't make an edit. I've got to know.
No. And and yeah, so like just the way that fight was edited was too much for me. I will attempt to watch episode 2 unless you tell me that it's edited in exactly the same way. I just couldn't follow it, and it's just jumping all over the place, and there's inserts of reaction shots, and then there's slow-mo and repeating the same moment in time 3 or 4 times in slow-mo, and it's not even that interesting because it's just a robot that was flipped and then is self-writing.
They love a self-write. It is like crack to them.
It's just
they love it.
But it's like, you know, I don't think it warrants 3 replays in slow-mo. So yeah, I just couldn't follow the fights. Or I said the fights. I said the fight. I couldn't follow what I watched. I will try episode 2, because I'm given to understand that there's less guff and that and that the series in general has really good fights, which I really want to see. But if they're edited in that way, then, you know, if I can't follow them, then I'm not going to watch it.
I'm going to say something that genuinely hurts me.
Oh no. The
fights in ClashBots are edited better than the fights in This Is Fighting Robots. And that's a shame, because you've got crap fights being edited kind of okay, and what were apparently really good fights not only being edited in such a way that they're just hard to follow, but being cut down massively and in some cases reduced to 10 seconds of highlights.
That is a shame. That is a shame.
It just seems like such a waste to get such an amazing feel. And, you know, this could improve. We're only 2 episodes in. There's plenty of opportunity for this to get better, and I really hope it does. But to get that field of robots together and showcase what they're doing this poorly would be a massive, massive waste.
Yeah, I mean, I unlike ClashBots, I will keep an eye on This Is Fighting Robots because there's such an impressive field of robots in it. But that is if the whole series is like, I mean, I'm more than happy to skip over all the guff in the middle. I'm happy to just watch the fights. But if there's no good version of the fights available, then it's just it's just a shame, and it's a waste. But well, it's just a waste.
To its credit, the fluff is better fluff. I think if I spoke Chinese, I would be enjoying this more than I would enjoy ClashBots. Although that is based entirely on the fact there are lots of British Roboteers in it that I like. So maybe a tad biased there, but... And, you know, we have seen some good moments of action. I just wish we'd seen the actual fights better. And again, I've stated this in a few places, but it's worth restating. My only fear is that this is so successful, you know, draws in so many viewers of a good demographic that everyone wants to grab. I'm worried it's going to do that so effectively that they'll decide it's a better use of their resources to do every series like this and no more like King of Bots was.
Yeah. We shall have to see. Only time will tell.
So yeah, coverage? No,
not now. I mean, we might do a retrospective on it, maybe, but
yeah,
no,
I feel like we're more likely to have useful things to say about this than ClashBots. But again, it's just...
I mean, us having useful things to say about anything is questionable.
Very true. I think if we were in deader times, it's something we might scramble something together with. But because we've got BattleBots coming up, you know, early next month, I think that's where our attention and our energy deserves to be.
Yeah, I agree.
A quick word for BattleBots. We don't really know very much, but we've seen a trailer. We know a lot of the field, although not all of it. We know it's starting on the 11th of May, I think it was, which I believe is a Friday, which is a pretty good slot they've been given by the looks of it. It seems like Discovery are generally treating it with a bit of respect.
Good.
The respect it deserves. So yeah, it's got a primetime Friday slot. That seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about it. I'm looking forward to it. The trailer seems exciting. There's a robot that looks like a forklift, which I'm curious about.
Free shipping, yep.
And but yeah, I hope it'll be good. It should be good.
What I'm going to say next, I think some people will consider a spoiler. They shouldn't, but they may anyway, so be warned of that potential spoiler. When they said that they were going to put on the fights that fans wanted, they were not joking. In that trailer alone, we've got Tombstone versus Megabite and Tombstone versus Minotaur, which are two of the best possible matchups I can think of. You've also got Ice Wave against Vanquish, which is a very good wedge. That looks like it will be a great fight. We've got a lot more sort of multi-bot fights as well. The whole not a legitimate sporting competition thing could turn out to be a very good move.
Yeah, well, an entertaining move for sure.
I'm fine with that, though. If a show sets out to be entertainment with robots fighting, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
What I don't want is a competition that claims to be a competition and is geared more towards the entertainment.
We just want honesty. That's all we ever ask for.
Yeah. Is it too much to ask, Sam?
What, of the film and TV industry? I think it probably is, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Coverage? Hell yeah.
I think so, yeah. I think we'll do coverage of that.
I mean, it could still turn out to be terrible, but hell yeah anyway. We'll make something with that if we have to.
We will bring our, great insight that can be found nowhere else to BattleBots.
So it's got some knotted cables for a second.
How have you managed that?
With great dexterity.
I mean, how could your cables have become, either they've always been knotted, in which case I want to ask, why are you only dealing with that now? Or you've somehow taken a cable that is connected to your computer and presumably your hand or your head, and it's become knotted somehow.
The answer, very simply, is entropy. You're laughing, but I'm right.
I can't really argue
Everything
with it,
moves from a state of order to disorder.
Yeah, well, on a big enough time scale, yeah. Whatever, man. Right, if you've got some serious entropy issues, you're right.
Entropy is a big deal in my life. It is the cause of and solution to most of my problems. Should we jump into some films?
Yeah.
Some films?
Yes.
So,
how will this go, I wonder?
We've got 3 films here, all of which involve robot combat in some capacity. And we're going to attack them in the order of what I personally believe is increasing realism. Now, let's be clear here. That does not mean that I think any of these are in any way realistic. So we're looking at the intro to Big Hero 6, or an early scene. I don't know, I've not seen the whole film. I've barely even seen this scene. Pacific Rim, which I know is a film that you love. And Real Steel, which is a film that I love.
I think me loving Pacific Rim is a bit of a stretch, but okay.
You've referenced it a lot.
I reference a lot of things a lot. I reference Donald Trump a lot. Doesn't mean I love him.
You'd love to talk about him. Actually, you don't even love that, do you?
Well, should we begin with Big Hero 6 then?
Yes, in which Ellis Ware wins a fight. I can't be the only person that's thought it. Come on.
Ah, that is genius. That is genius. So yeah, the scene in question is the opening of Big Hero 6. You should watch the whole film. It's an excellent film.
This scene will be in show notes, though, for the lazy.
Be in show notes, yeah. But no, it's an excellent revenge film, which is a reference you'll get if you watch it. And so the opening of this is this kid. His name is Hero, and he's doing underground robot fighting stuff with his little robot that he's built. And it's a little humanoid thing that looks like it's quite weedy. And he goes to this underground sort of fighting thing, places some bets. He's fighting a robot that's clearly going to beat it. The bigger robot wins, and then Hero raises the stakes, like double or nothing type thing, and then flicks a switch, and his robot suddenly reveals itself to be some ludicrously overpowered machine and wins.
Now, something that I'm going to refer to a bit in this kind of whole discussion is rules of engagement. And I understand that with this being a kind of underground thing, you could argue there are no rules of engagement. But I'm a bit upset by the lack of weight classes. You've got a tiny thing against a huge thing. And yes, the tiny thing wins, but that still doesn't seem right to me.
I think you've just got to go, this is an underground fight and there are no rules. There are no rules on the street.
Are there no rules? Or are there implied rules? Because if there were no rules, I'd have expected it to get completely smashed up the first time. If it's a street fight with no rules, it's a fight to the death, not a fight to the minor incapacitation.
Okay, right, so I should probably clarify and say that there are no rules that act in any way other than in favour of the people that are there already, you know? It's like, there are rules that act in favour of the big people winning, the people that control the fight, right? You've got the big guy that's clearly like the guy that's always there, the organiser's like, well, yeah, we're going to let this tiny little robot fight the big robot if he wants to, because the tiny little robot's clearly going to lose, and we're going to make some money out of him. But if it was the other way around, maybe they would. Maybe they would require weight classes. I don't know.
I suppose the idea of having them fight to the death wouldn't be good for the long-term survival of the underground fighting scene, would it? Because if every robot is getting destroyed after one fight, you're going to run out of competitors quite quickly.
This is true.
Incidentally, the issue that Robot Wars had in Series 8 and 9.
Yeah.
Robots getting too beaten up. What I do find interesting about it is the fact that this whole thing looks as though it's been set up as a kind of sumo competition. They're in a little ring, the big robot looks very sumo-y, and then that's nothing to do with what happens. I was expecting a nice little pushing match, but instead we've got a weird thing that just somehow flies apart, defies gravity, and pulls something apart despite having nothing to push against.
Well, I guess in terms of this being like a sumo ring, but then not really sumo fighting within it, I mean, the whole film is a really weird amalgamation of American and Japanese culture, because I think the city they're in is like San Fran, Tokyo or something.
Oh dear. Someone wasn't trying that day in the office.
And it's got a very, like, there's a Golden Gate Bridge, but it's like a Japanese-styled Golden Gate Bridge and stuff like that.
Does it get destroyed like it should in any robot fighting film?
I do not think it does, no. I'm sorry to say.
Is it even a film then, really?
Does it even count?
If the Golden Gate Bridge doesn't get broken, it's not a film.
It's just every film ever must have the Golden Gate Bridge being destroyed. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And I'm going to prove it when we talk about the next one.
But what about the one after that?
It's left up to the audience whether it's standing or not. I choose to believe it's not. We never specifically see anyone cross it. So by my book, that means it's down.
You've got a headcanon that says at the end of every film, the Golden Gate Bridge... End of Star Wars, Golden Gate Bridge has been destroyed.
Actually, it hasn't been built yet. It's a long time ago, Sam.
Oh, so it's
first words.
So the Golden Gate Bridge just has to not exist for it to count as a film. It doesn't have to have been destroyed.
I'll allow it.
Okay.
I'm kind like that.
Are you now with your ridiculous definitions?
Don't get me started. You've already threatened to quit if I do. But what is a Golden Gate Bridge?
Oh no.
Ship of Theseus, anybody?
Ship of Theseus with the paint job, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
No, why am I encouraging this? No. No more.
You've already given your tacit approval by leaving it in edits, so I take that as fair game.
I can't even take this out in protest because no one will know.
I've backed you into a corner.
I don't know where else to go with Big Hero 6. The little robot is quite funny, right? Because it's so ridiculous. But this robot represents, to me, like the perfect multi-bot.
What, because it starts together and ends together?
Because it starts together, it splits up to great effect, and then recombines into one robot again. It's glorious. This is what all multi-bots should be. This is what all teams that build multi-bots should strive to create.
You probably remember this scene better than I do. Does he have a remote control? I feel like he's got some kind of pad that he's using, hasn't he?
I think problem is so like later on in the film, like so the component parts of that little robot are like they're a key plot point throughout the rest of the film, and later on he comes up with like a head control thing, so he can like control it with his mind, and he's got lots of them. I think at that point, I think he's got a pad or something. Yeah.
So how's he controlling all three at once?
Well, they're all interlinked. You see, they're all like, and they're all like their hive mind type things. I think that's what I'm going to go with.
So he's basically telling them to do a certain thing, and they're working out how to do it.
Yeah, he's telling the robot to punch, and the robot is doing the punch.
But does the other robot have this same capability to essentially think for itself?
I don't think you could say that the little robot is thinking for itself.
But it's deciding on how to execute an instruction, which is in itself complex. This isn't the sort of thing where you've got a stick for forwards and backs and lefts and rights.
But I don't think he's pressing one button. I don't think he's pressing a tear the opponent's head off button. I think he's pressing a lot of buttons. I feel like he's... I feel like I should rewatch.
You think he's controlling all three individually?
I feel
really?
like I should rewatch. Well, if you want to go down like the stereotype of Asian gamers, that doesn't seem too far fetched. The actions per minute or second or whatever that some professional gamers can do, it's insane. I feel like I should rewatch the thing, but I feel like he's like doing quite a lot with his controller at that point. I think it's like driver assists in cars, you know. I don't think the thing's thinking for itself. And I don't think he's giving it really high-level things like take the head. I mean, if he's got enough high-level control to say, I'll just remove the opponent's head, he's probably got enough high-level control to just press one button that says win the fight.
That sounds like a very good strategy.
My controller has one button.
Win! I mean, I'd argue that in professional sports, you also might have use for a lose button, depending on how honest you are.
What kind of screwed up sporting event would have losing being a positive outcome?
Match fixing.
That's a positive outcome.
It is for the person getting paid to fix the match, and for the person winning when they probably wouldn't have otherwise.
I'm not counting corruption or stupid scoring systems in this.
Well, seeing as we're going to be talking about boxing later, we may have to.
No, I refuse. You can't make me.
Yeah, I'm very interested by the control schemes being used here, because that's going to be a theme across all of this idea of how do you control a humanoid machine? Because the obvious thing to do is some kind of exosuit where you make a move and it mirrors it. We kind of saw that with the Walden Overlord in BattleBots. The idea of controlling something this complex from a single handheld controller seems mad to me. And to then decide that it's going to split in three, have the ability to fly from somewhere, so you're now controlling it in 3 dimensions instead of 2. Okay, the kid is clearly good. You know, he is modelled on Ellis Ware. We know he's going to be a genius, but he can't be that good.
Well, he's like the child, the model child genius, you know.
I don't know, man. Dexter from Dexter's Lab, to me, is the OG boy genius.
That's true.
Jimmy Neutron at a push.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a stereotypical child genius, and hero is that, you know, in name and everything else. Is
it truly heroic to just build a machine to do your bidding? This is kind of getting into the Batman territory of, is Batman really a superhero when actually he's just got means?
Well, I think he's like he's an anti-hero, isn't he?
You see, I should have known you'd do this. You just add a third option.
Excuse me for adding the correct option here.
The part I'm questioning is super, not hero.
Oh God, what is you just have to define everything, don't you? What counts as super? What do you think? Do you think Batman counts as
Well, I'd argue that really superhero is kind of shorthand for supernatural hero. But I have no basis for that apart from me thinking that sounds right.
So is Iron Man not a superhero?
Absolutely not. And it really annoyed me when last year I went to a fancy dress party where the theme was superheroes dressed as Rick Sanchez and was told that didn't count by someone dressed as Batman. It's like, I don't think it counts either, but you're as wrong as I am, and at least I'm aware of it.
Does Thor count as a superhero?
Demigod, not superhero. Although, somewhere between demigod and god for sure. I'd argue if you have the powers of a demigod or god, you then have the capability to act as a superhero. So yeah, why not?
Act as a superhero, interesting. So my final question here is Superman a superhero?
Why wouldn't he be?
Because he's an alien.
And? That's supernatural in a sense.
No, you can't.
He has powers beyond the laws of physics.
How can he? How can you, if we assume like a self-consistent universe where the laws of physics allow Superman to do the things that he does, right? The thing that makes him different, is that he's an alien, which isn't supernatural.
That depends on your definition of natural. Because from a
He's not
functional
created. He's
point
not like
of view,
this is not like a designed being that's been created in a test tube somewhere. This is a naturally occurring form of life somewhere else in the universe. And on his planet, he's normal, like by human standards. And then he comes over here, and because of some ridiculousness with the Earth's yellow sun, all of a sudden he becomes a lot stronger and generally, better, right? But as part of his alien physiology.
but you could say that with any superhero. Oh, it's just a quirk of physics that we don't currently understand. That's what you're basically saying there.
But like, which completely...
And I would argue that the use of the word normal, as opposed to sort of supernatural, and I've just realised I've mixed words there, but we'll run with it. This idea of natural is simply consistent with our current experience. That's what natural really means. So anything beyond and outside of that becomes supernatural.
So Batman is like abnormally clever and abnormally fit, right? He is because he's sort of like he's the great detective, right? He is a very, very clever, like Bruce Wayne is a very clever man. Like I think he's meant to be like basically cleverer than basically anyone. And because he designs and builds so much of what it is that he does. I don't think this is portrayed quite the same way in the films and stuff, but he does, in comics and stuff, he's sort of like designs and builds basically everything that he does, and he's incredibly intelligent in solving crimes and being a detective, and he's a polymath, right? He can just basically do anything and learn it very quickly. And then he's also very physically skilled. He's like above Olympian in terms of physical prowess and strength. Again, this isn't true of all representations of Batman, but in many of them he's like non-lethal, and he's to deliver the kind of blows that he delivers in a way to knock out an opponent but without killing them, and do so quickly, is incredibly difficult to do. And I would make the argument that he is abnormal. He is supernatural in his ability to do that.
Okay, so you're saying that if you are the cleverest and strongest person in the world at the same time, that makes you a superhero.
I'm just trying
Would
to find...
just being the cleverest person in the world make you a superhero, or just being the fittest?
I'm just trying to find the boundary for you of what counts as supernatural. I mean, you talk about anything that's like out of the ordinary, right? And that Batman and Bruce Wayne count as that, I think. And I'm just curious to know, like, can I convince you based on those merits that Batman is a superhero, or is it that supernatural takes something a bit more than that? I'm just trying to find the boundary.
Everything that Batman does or has achieved, he has done through normal means. He's learned to do stuff, he's acquired wealth, and he is trained to make his body strong. None of those are things that are completely out of reach for any other human.
Well, I mean, his parents acquired wealth. Like, he inherited most of that.
Yeah, he didn't even do that. He's basically trumped his way through.
No, you didn't just do that. That's unacceptable to me.
In my headcanon,
Oh, God.
Batman is Donald Trump.
Just imagine one day him, like, it almost wouldn't surprise me if he did. I'm Batman.
Problem is that by your logic, if Elon Musk started fighting crime, you'd have to call him a superhero.
It's not necessarily my logic that I agree with or stand by, because I'm just trying to find the boundary. I'm just trying to understand the boundaries of what you think is a superhero.
A superhero has to be doing something that is beyond the reach of any human. That, for me, is the line.
Okay, beyond the reach of any human.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have machines that are superheroes.
It has to be a person, though.
It has to be a person.
Or a living being.
A living being that is not
Organic.
human, basically.
Has to be organic.
Has
to be living.
Does Spider-Man count?
Yes.
But that's not beyond the reach of of humans, because he went from human to the thing. Like, you could find that spider that bit him and bite all other humans with it. Or the same with the Hulk, right? You can recreate, or Captain America. Is Captain America a superhero?
That is a very interesting grey area. Because he is a result of science, but it is science fiction. So that's when it becomes tricky. I'd say Wolverine is kind of the same issue.
Wolverine isn't the product of science, though.
I thought he was.
No.
I thought he'd been injected with the adamantium, and that was kind of it.
Oh well, so the adamantium thing is that, but I mean his regeneration thing is a natural mutation.
Oh, I forgot about the regeneration.
And the claw things, I think, were originally bones. They were bone claws that would come out.
Okay, he could be a superhero then. That's fine.
He can't, because of an abnormal mutation stuff. So, but any mutant in the X-Men universe is a superhero, or can be a superhero if they do good things.
I suppose there's also a caveat that the ability has to be useful and has to be applied in such a way that it helps people. But that's more of a societal thing. I'd kind of let that slide. You know, Hancock, for example, I will allow to be a superhero, even though he's kind of a dick about it.
Kind of.
I think his motives are largely pure.
Good job.
Hey, at least he's honest about what he wants. But no, Deadpool would be another one that's kind of a grey area there.
Yeah, because Deadpool was created. He was Weapon X.
I've only recently watched it. I didn't particularly care for it, but I know he fits the argument. That's as far as I can go.
Well, there we go.
But I think we should be able to agree that intelligence is not a superpower.
Lex Luthor?
Don't know enough about him.
Well, human, but very, very clever, and as a result can continually outwit... Well, I say that. The combination of that and having...
Plot armor?
Plot armor, yeah. Plot armor and that green stone.
That's his main superpower. Is plot armor a superpower? Kryptonite?
That one random, like... element in the universe that Superman is just weak to for some reason. So a combination of having access to that and being very clever means he consistently bests Superman in well, not bests, but like is a rival for Superman constantly.
And that is Superman's failing.
So Lex isn't super in any way.
Maybe if Superman was a proper superhero, not just an alien, you know.
Oh, your inconsistency.
This does make me want to ask, and I realise that this is just adding to the off-topic nature of what we're doing here. What would be your choice of superpower?
It depends, right? So is this a world that has other superpowers in it?
I suppose it would have to be, yeah.
So therefore, the only logical superpower is the ability to mimic other superpowers.
Are you going Sylar style here from Heroes?
I mean, if that's the only way to acquire superpowers, then so be it. But I'd rather.
But how are you going to overpower the first superhero? You're going to have to work your way up the ladder of superpowers.
Well, yeah, just outwit someone. But I mean, I'd like to.
But that would require intelligence, which apparently is a superpower now.
No, I'm not saying it's a superpower. Like just a normal level of intelligence to begin with. But I mean, if I could acquire superpowers without killing people, then that would be great.
Interesting. Very much a sort of a game breaker's approach to the question, but an entirely fair one, entirely valid.
Well, it's like, you know, what do you wish for if you come across a genie, right? The only logical option there is more wishes. That should just be the first wish, right? And it's only when you take that off the table with some stupidly contrived example that it changes things. So like in a world where no one else has superpowers, I'm the only one with superpowers, then you'd have to sort of think more carefully about what I'd like that power to be.
So if you were the only person with superpowers, no, it is a perfectly acceptable answer to the question. I'm not gonna rebuff you for it.
I feel like now that we've gone down there, I feel like I should just give a couple of quick answers to that, just for closure. I think the thing that the Death Eaters do in Harry Potter, where the way they move, like become that dust and then fly around, I think that's really cool, and I'd love to be able to do that just for how cool it looks. But I think a possibly more useful function would be telekinetic powers.
Telekinetic is... See, I'm always trying to think about what is the most overpowered superpower. And telekinesis is fine. You know, there are lots of situations in which that is useful. I can think of many during my normal day where that would just be handy to have. But I'm not sure I could abuse it as easily as I'd want.
Well, I mean, telekinesis gives you flight, effectively. You can...
yeah, true.
I mean, like, you can just telekinesis yourself. I think you have an enormous...
Telekinesize?
You have an enormous ability to cause great deals of harm to other people with very little effort, right? You just think, I'm just going to telekinetically pinch a a vein somewhere.
Oh, cold.
I'm just gonna snip a nerve in your in your spinal column. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with. I think telekinesis is a pretty overpowered thing, which is.
Can you telekinesis something you can't see though?
And yeah, I would. If you know it's there, then yeah. Well, even if you know it's there, I guess.
Across what kind of distances can you do this?
Well, any distance.
So if I knew something was on the moon, I could move it?
Well, I don't see why not.
Because I'm thinking you could really break the laws of physics quite quickly here.
Yeah,
Because you're basically violating causality.
I think telekinesis is a hugely overpowered thing, and it's always like disappointingly underused in any program or film that has a telekinetic person. It's like they're always boring. It's like they just levitate objects that are in the vicinity. It's like you could end so many things so quickly.
Surely there'd be a limitation to telekinesis though, in terms of the size of thing you can move and the effort that would take.
So in terms of creating like a good story, yes, you need the limits because that creates tension and all kinds of other stuff. But in terms of like a superpower that I'd want in the real world, no, there are no limits. I would want no limitations on this.
I have decided.
I would want the power to be able to telekinetically collapse the sun if I wanted to.
And you would want to. You'd have to actively stop yourself doing something horrendous.
Yeah. Everyone do as I say, or I shall move the sun.
A little nearer. Actually, couldn't you just move us a bit further away and get rid of the whole global warming thing?
The telekinesis, you could solve global. You just telekinetically move all the greenhouse gases away. Just get rid of them.
Just send them into
Well,
space.
just problem solved, Just let them escape. Just give them escape velocity. Not all the carbon. A lot of the carbon dioxide and methane and stuff. Just push it away.
I'm just thinking of other things you could fling into space now, because why not?
I mean, as well, so with telekinesis, right? Assuming no limits, you can telekinetically manipulate like the subatomic level, right? So you can just do anything.
Again, I'd still argue that you've got to be able to perceive it to act on it.
Well, there we go. You didn't ask me what would make a compelling superpower in a story. You asked me what superpowers I'd want in the real world.
Look, I asked you what superpower you'd want in the real world in the hope of ruining it for you, okay? And it didn't work out that way. You spoke about one I didn't even know, and then you picked one of the good ones. Ruined everything.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I suppose we should move on to Pacific Rim, really, unless you have anything more to say on Big Hero.
I think we can move back to Pacific Rim. I think we're there.
I'll allow you to summarise Pacific Rim as a film.
What happens in this film, there's like a fissure underwater through which aliens come, or some other dimensional thing comes through. And humanity's response to this is to build giant robots called Jaegers. And they are piloted by two people because they're sort of like controlled with some like neural link, and one person controlling a being of that size is apparently too much for the human brain. So they're controlled by two people working in sync to drive these huge humanoid robots, and they go fight the I forget what the aliens are called, kaiju. Yes, the kaiju. They go and fight those things. I forget exactly what the climax of this is. Is it something like they sort of discover this is just the first wave of an invasion, and then they sort of have some like mind link with an alien to find out their plan or some weirdness like that? And
yeah, then they nuke the whole portal thing and everything's fine, except Idris Elba is dead, so what's the point in living anymore?
Yeah, of course, nuclear is the only option here. And I think there's some of the usual rubbish in films around some like general's daughter who is not allowed to fight until the last minute, and then she turns out to be the hero or something. But
that's my big takeaway from this film. I was expecting it to be more about the robots.
I
wasn't disappointed. I think it was a genuinely acceptable film. And bear in mind, my bar is very high for what an acceptable film is.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
When you look past all the general tropiness and the quite generic nature of a lot of it, it's all right. And I think there are lots of things about the machines that they've got kind of right. Also a lot that's ridiculous, but they've got quite a lot of it quite right. They've paid attention to the different ways of powering them and things like that. They've got a nice variety of designs within them, although for some reason they're all humanoid because we're narcissists apparently.
Isn't there one with two heads, or is that only in the other one?
There's one with 3 arms, which I'm definitely going to get onto.
Okay. I knew there was something different, because I think one of them is piloted by 3 people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Presumably the one with 3 arms.
Yes. Now, I spoke earlier about control systems. I think that Pacific Rim has the best idea of what a control system for this should be, which is basically the pilots are moving and the machine is mimicking those movements.
Mm-hmm.
Except in this case, it has to be 2 pilots because sci-fi.
Yeah,
because conversations in cockpits are apparently the real bread and butter of any film like this, and where all the drama happens.
Well, yeah. Well, you need the tension of like, can the hero find a new co-pilot or something?
Will the best co-pilot be allowed to go with this? Oh, I'm going to ignore that. I'm here for the robots.
Yeah. See, ignore all the stupid Hollywood tropes.
So yeah, the way they're controlled makes a lot of sense. I'm fine with that. My only question is why they decided that big versions of people were the way to go here. If you're going to make massive war machines, just make bigger versions of tanks and stuff.
Well, like once you've gone with that, well, maybe I don't know what decision came first. I suppose it's like once you've gone with that control scheme, what they did is the only logical thing.
I'm fairly sure you don't start with a control scheme and build from there.
But yeah, now that I'm sort of thinking, as I came to voice that thought, it's like this is just ridiculous. You wouldn't do a control scheme first. You'd build and design design and then build a ridiculously big thing, and then figure out how to effectively control it.
The thing that annoyed me most, though, was the fact that most of these machines basically seem to rely on punching the monsters. Now, there's one of them that's really cool. It's kind of got saws that are deployable from the hands, and it just cuts stuff up. And as soon as they decide to do that in the fight, suddenly they've won, making the previous 2 or 3 minutes where they were just punching the thing a bit pointless. All through it, I was thinking, why don't you just have a big bloody sword? And what did they have at the end? That they just chosen not to use this whole time? A big bloody sword. Because it turns out, no matter how big the enemy is, if you're just as big and you stab them, they're in trouble. And then they've got this big, like, plasma cannon for no apparent reason that takes, like, a minute to charge, just long enough for something to go wrong within the plot. And then my favourite part of all was when they withdrew the arm ready to punch something, and then, for some reason this part was voice activated, shouted, "Elbow rocket!" And there was a rocket which pushed the elbow forward.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's glorious. That happens in one of the Marvel films with Hulkbuster as well. It's great. I love how most of your problems with this stem from the fact that it's a film.
I mean, that is usually my problem with films. You've heard how critical I am of TV programmes. Imagine how critical I am of films.
I mean, the plasma cannon that takes a minute to charge up because it's in a film and they need a plot device. They need tension.
We haven't got onto 3 arms yet.
What have you got to say about 3 arms then?
Here's my issue with 3 arms. The idea is that each pilot is acting as one hemisphere of the overall brain. So essentially, one person is controlling the left side, one person is controlling the right side, but they are also linked, so they're both performing the same actions. I'm fine with that.
Is that how that works? That's not how I read that.
In universe, I think that's the idea. It's introduced very early on. But the idea is that the 2 people are doing the same motions and they are replicated by the machine. So how exactly having a third person let you activate a third arm? Are you attaching a third arm to all 3 of these people? No, you're not. So what part of their body are they moving to make that arm work?
I think we all know what... No, I feel like maybe this is just my headcanon, but I thought it was more about just the mental strain of operating such a large machine was too much for one person. I thought the combination of 2 people was more to have more brain power in there to sort of share that load. And I thought it was less about you control the left side and you control the right side and stuff, and more about by linking the brains, they act as one bigger brain. Right, and then like the meme, you add a third brain in here, and you end up with a galaxy brain with 3 people that can control 3 arms. Right, that's the way I sort of interpreted that. But yeah, maybe I haven't seen the film in a while, so maybe I've forgotten some little detail about what is actually meant to happen in universe. But I mean, my headcanon, if nothing else, is that it's just about mental strain, and 3 people gives them a bit more mental brain power to deal with where on earth a third arm should be.
I mean, my reading of it is based on the fact that they mentioned hemispheres of the brain at the beginning.
Well.
Maybe I've over-extrapolated from that. I don't know. But my main issue with the whole third arm thing is still that the machine is meant to be mimicking the movements of the pilots.
Yeah.
So putting a third person in doesn't mean that they can all move 3 arms.
Maybe the third person is just doing that one arm.
But he's moving the same as the other two. We see inside the cockpit. He's still in the weird sort of treadmill, doing exactly the same as they're doing.
So this is where like my headcanon I think makes a bit more sense, because you've got like the mental load. Clearly 2 people is enough brain power to control a bipedal humanoid robot with 2 arms, right? And then adding a third person is a bit more brain capacity, and you can almost have like those 2 people still being or like, you know, you've added more capacity to this one like conjoined brain, and now it's got the capacity to be thinking about dealing with a third arm. Where is the third arm on that robot, by the way? I've completely forgotten.
It's kind of coming out above or below the normal right arm, I think. I was expecting it to like come over the top, like a kind of scorpion tail, and be really cool, but no, just putting the thing off balance.
Come on, DuckDuckGo images. Don't let me down.
Still with the DuckDuckGo, eh?
I'm still going. And you know what? It's letting me down. How do you spell Jaeger?
Jaeger.
Yeah.
And I think I managed to get my J's and G's the right way around there, because I still have trouble with those.
That is what I have typed, and you have let me down. How do you do Google image? GI? Yeah.
Today in Sam and Ryan Google Robots. It's called Crimson Typhoon, if that helps.
Has my keyboard stopped working? My keyboard is... Oh my god. Let me just...
Your computer's not happy.
Unplug my keyboard and plug it in again. There we go. What was it called? Crimson Typhoon. And Google, being the freaky thing it is, predict those guns. Okay, so it's got... So there's 2 right arms are smaller than its big left arm. Interesting.
To me, the only real surprise here is that it didn't win a dodgy judge's decision.
This is almost like a sort of like halfway towards General Grievous with the arms.
Yes.
Weird. Fair enough. I was just to satisfy my curiosity. I have no real point to make about that.
Can I bring up another grievance with the design of these machines?
You can.
Why are the controllers, the drivers, the pilots in the head?
Where would you put them?
Back centre of the body, most protected place.
I mean, I would put them, you know, somewhere else entirely. I'd put them in a different country.
You don't want to introduce latency to the system. I can understand that. You know, you need responsiveness.
In a universe that has built these things, I think you can assume that they can do like speed of light latency, which I guess is probably still too high.
Just imagine the bandwidth you need for the entirety of 2 human brains thinking and acting.
This is true, a lot of bandwidth. But again, you know, you've got
and
a
the
society
last thing you want is a dropout mid-fight.
Oh no, lost connection. What does it do? Does it just freeze, or does it keep doing the thing it was just doing? Like if you initiated a punch and then you cut out, would it just keep punching on repeat? I assume like the 2 arms on the right of this crimson thing are can spin around each other. You know, like like that kid's joke, right, where you're walking towards spinning your arms in big windmills, walking towards something. If you get in my way, you know, it's your fault, not mine. Maybe that's what the robots do.
The worst thing is that sounds significantly more effective than what they actually do, which is basically box with monsters. And the worst thing is, well, it's a really good thing in film terms, but all of the kaiju are different. So there's one that's kind of modelled on a crocodile, and there was one that seemed to be kind of modelled on a gnome shark. Some of them stand upright, some of them don't. Some of them like to swim around, some of them don't. A person is the worst design for lots of those situations. At least put them on some kind of tripod so they're a bit more stable.
Is it the worst? I mean, like, human form is proven quite effective at dealing with lots of diverse situations.
No, human ingenuity has proven very useful. How do we deal with most predators? Guns. If you try to fight a lion, you will lose. And I will pay to watch. There are a lot of animals
well, yeah, but like, so,
on
right,
Earth that are the same size of us.
No, I'm not going to let you get away
with
with that lion thing, because the lion thing is not that the human form is the problem. It's the fact that the lion is massively outweighing you. Outweighs you and is massively stronger. But if you scaled a human up appropriately, it would be fine.
You're saying that a fat person could beat up a lion?
It's not just a weight thing, but like, you know, just the strength of a lion is so much more than the strength of a human.
Oh no, I need to see how much a lion weighs.
More than humans. I'm saying if you scaled a human up like 150%, right? Take an Olympic athlete, 150% more. I reckon. You know, there'd be a fight. You'd have a fight.
Okay, Female lion, 130 kilos. That's not a lot more than a muscular person.
Yeah, but if you think about how much strength is packed in one of those, right? So, like your dogs, I presume, can pull you around.
Yes, they can, and regularly do.
So this is what I mean. Like you said, like the lion. You know, even if you had a person that weighed 130 kilos, I'm saying is you need 130 kilos of pure muscle, which I think for most humans is probably either some ridiculously fit person or scale them up slightly. You know, like I said, 100.
About 8% body fat would be considered pretty lean, I'd say. Obviously, there's like muscle weight as well, but bone weight as well. But animals have bones.
But
Largely.
my point here is it's not that a bipedal thing is invariably going to lose against a cat-like thing. My point is that the reason the lion would win that fight is because it is stronger and generally speaking probably heavier than the opponent, right? Whereas if you took a humanoid form that was matched it in strength and stuff, it would be a fight. The human form is not the weakness here, and I think the same is true here. Like the human form of those robots, it's a very versatile thing that humans have, right? So I think that's fine. I think that's a valid design thing to do.
If we could redesign humans, we'd do it differently. That's the thing.
What would you do differently about the human form? I can tell you what I'd change.
I would make it very easy to switch between bipedal and quadrupedal. That would be my main change for different situations. Because I fall over a lot going up and down hills, and that wouldn't happen if I had 4 legs.
Would you do something, sprout legs or go onto all fours? Like
Well, no, you just have a body design, particularly in the spine, that allows you to easily use your arms as legs.
Like a gorilla?
Gorilla's probably not the best example. I'd think more other smaller primates would probably be better examples.
Okay.
I would also have a tail.
I think the most obvious thing to change is the design of the human eye.
Let me guess, octopus eye. Or are you
Yes.
thinking compound eyes?
No, I don't know. I've never experienced compound eyes.
I mean, you've never experienced an octopus eye either, have you?
Yes, but an octopus eye is an obvious upgrade because it hasn't got the ridiculous blind spot that human eyes have.
That's another thing with the Jaegers. Why have heads at all? Why have a
humanoid.
limited field of vision?
I mean, all these arguments apply to real steel.
Oh yeah, and I will get to them. Don't you worry.
Okay, I just want
Although
to make
real
sure
steel
you're
is
going to.
different because real steel is in the context of a sport which is trying to imitate a sport that humans do.
I just want to lay the groundwork so that I can laugh at you when you're inconsistent about this later on.
Different situations, my friend. This is saving the world. That's entertainment. If we decided to make robot footballers but gave them all 6 legs, that would be a bit unfair. Because then you're not trying to make the best, you're trying to make the most entertaining. Whereas in this case, when it's the only line of defence between every coastal city around the Pacific and massive monsters, you kind of want to go with the optimal approach.
They've got the giant walls. They're clearly the best defence.
But who's going to pay for the wall, Sam?
Who will pay for the walls? The kaiju. The kaiju will pay for the walls.
Oh, I'm not going to go down this road anymore. No, the whole idea of a humanoid design, okay, it fits in with the control scheme they want to use. In terms of mirroring what a human does, you're kind of limited to that. But I just think you can improve on it so easily. You know, change the weight distribution for one. Make it a much lower centre of gravity.
I don't know, man. Like, because I mean, part of why I resist this idea that you're presenting here is that there's a lot of very serious time, money, and research being put into building humanoid robots by very clever people. And
And
it
again,
might be,
I don't know why.
it might just be human ego, but I think and maybe that is just the only reason that we do it. But I mean, you know, NASA are exploring humanoid robots for exploration of other planets because it's, like I said, it's a very versatile thing. It's very capable. It's a very capable form.
But again, for exploration of difficult terrain, 4 legs seems so much better than 2.
What terrain can you think of that a 4-legged thing can do that a human can't?
Specifically dealing with steep inclines.
Humans can climb up steep inclines. Humans can climb cliffs as well as those cliff climbing
With
goat
tools.
things. But like we have tools. Like humans can use tools. One of the many advantages of having the arms with the very articulate hands is we can use tools.
But how about just not needing the tools? Not being reliant on the tools,
you could
especially
do that with a
if you're on
robot,
another
like, you get
planet
these-
and you can't get any more tools.
You get the robot with like the transforming hands. Like there's all kinds of like I still think the humanoid form is a very, very effective approach to solving these problems.
Problem is, you're adding unnecessary complexity, and also another issue with the human form is a lack of redundancy. If you lose a leg, you're pretty buggered. If a dog loses a leg, they can adapt quite well. They've still got 3. You've only lost a quarter of your legs.
Humans adapt quite well to only having one leg. Can build ourselves another leg.
Yeah, through the use of prostheses, which wouldn't be an option on another planet unless you're just going to send a spare leg out.
Maybe you would. Maybe it would have a backpack full of legs. I don't know. That image is great.
You probably didn't recognise me because of my red leg.
I've just got an image of like Asimo walking around with just like legs poking out.
Not even its own legs, that's the creepy thing. But no, the other big advantage of 4 legs over 2 is traction. And manoeuvrability, in a sense, because it naturally puts your centre of gravity lower.
Yeah, I don't think 4 legs are better. I think they're better in
4
certain...
legs good, 2 legs bad.
I think 4 legs
I
are
read
better
that in a book once.
in certain situations, but I'm not sure as a like general purpose machine. I think the other advantage of like a humanoid thing is that humans are very familiar with humanoid form, right? We're very familiar. Like if you've got a humanoid robot and it's presented with a problem that wasn't predicted, you instead of going, how can we make this tracked robot with one arm do this thing? You go, well, how would I do this thing if I were there? And then you just make the robot do that.
That's the one advantage I see, particularly in the sort of canon of the film, is the control scheme. That it is more intuitive to control something that looks like you. But I'd argue, if you're training pilots, you might as well train them a little bit harder to use something that's just objectively better.
I mean, I feel like the response really is much more of a ranged attack on these things, but you know.
That as well. How about we just invest in bigger explosions?
Bigger guns, more guns. Let's take the American approach. I shouldn't say that. That's just humanity's approach in general, really, isn't it?
I would like to make one final motion on this.
Okay.
And that is that the main Jaeger should be renamed. From whatever it was, Gypsy something, it should be named Yeti, because it's a robot from Alaska.
That would be a better name.
And let's just have a final moment's silence for the good hour and a half of that film I watched that they didn't use the sword.
My one final point, which I think I've made before, is about the voice actress for the AI in the robots or in that film.
Go on.
So she's the voice of GLaDOS in Portal.
Oh dear.
And I can't not associate her voice with that robot anymore. So it's like the whole film thinking, this AI is going to betray you all, and it never does.
Again, I wouldn't really call that AI. I'd say that's below the level of the computer in Star Trek, but in fact, it's basically Siri or Alexa, let's be honest. Or Janet.
Janet, yeah, maybe. Janet's AI, though, come on.
Possibly beyond AI.
Not a robot, but AI.
Yeah, I'll let you have that. Should we move on to Real Steel then?
Let's do it.
The extremely Hollywood story of an objectively weak robot which succeeds because a child believes in it.
This was not a film that I was expecting to enjoy, and I enjoyed it. It was very good.
I think you'll particularly love it if you liked that episode of The Simpsons where Homer becomes a boxer, because it's basically the same idea.
It's exactly the same plot, isn't it? It's just a robot.
Just take punches until the opponent is tired.
Yeah. There you go. The Simpsons did it first, probably.
I'll give a little synopsis. Real Steel is basically a story about a world in which human boxing has been replaced by robot boxing. And we're following one man, Hugh Jackman, and his estranged son, taking a robot they found in a scrap heap to being a world champion.
Of the people.
Because it's outdated, and that somehow makes it good.
It's outdated and seemingly has this very rare shadow function. I don't understand how that's rare.
Well, it's obsolete, isn't it?
How is it obsolete, though? I mean, it's clearly the most effective...
It's like asking why your iPhone doesn't have polyphonic ringtones.
But, like, it's not... Polyphonic ringtones are not considerably more effective than any other ringtone, right? Like, the shadow mode is clearly far more effective than anything else for controlling these robots, and yet somehow it's rare.
There's a reason for that. It's only effective if you have someone controlling it who is a skilled boxer. And given that human boxing seems to have been replaced by robot boxing, they're going to be a dying breed.
Is human skill in boxing, is that a rare thing in this universe? Because that wasn't made.
You'd imagine so.
I mean, it does seem very likely to be, because obviously it seems like boxing has been phased out in Hugh Jackman's lifetime in this film, which can't be very long. And it's no way he's the only boxer in the world who still remembers how to box, right? Like, you can't go from all human boxing to no human boxing in one person's lifetime and have everyone suddenly forget how to box apart from this one man.
I can very easily imagine a world in which people see that robots are doing stuff, so just assume it makes the humans obsolete. And I can see this world very quickly becoming dominated by people with technical expertise, not boxing expertise.
I know a lot of the premise of this robot bothered me because it's clear, because it's just it's not a robot that I think wins through being it's just is a technically superior robot in so many ways. It's got a better control system and it can take more hits than anything else. And it's not as if it's like a random fluke that it can take more hits. I mean, it's explicitly stated that it's a robot that's designed to take more hits. And I don't understand how you've had the technology for the shadow mode boxing and the taking more hits, and then you've got like the world's greatest robot in Zeus that doesn't have that.
Well, the world's greatest robot in Zeus has something that they believe is better, which is AI. And the ability to learn and adapt, and the ability to not need human control, which presumably reduces latency, which allows it to do better in combat. It also seems to be more expensive than all the others, which instantly makes it better.
But the thing, right, so with Zeus, with this AI, right, it's still piloted by two people, at least, until the very end when suddenly this guy that's somehow a god comes in and pilots the whole thing by himself, which is somehow better. It's like the AI must be pretty damn bad if one person can come in there and do what he thinks is a better job.
I think those people are there more as telemetry men than actual controllers.
But like, they're pressing buttons, they're doing things. They're not just sat there staring at a screen. They're you know, I'm just going to watch the power drain.
Presumably they're trying to optimize systems so that the AI doesn't have to worry about that and just worries about beating stuff up.
But if you've got an AI that can do the stuff that they claim it can do, surely it can optimize its own systems as well. It doesn't seem like a far reach to me.
It's potential that there's even a rule within this, because we don't learn the rules of this competition. Maybe there's a rule against fully autonomous machines. Maybe they have to have the people there as kind of a dead man switch kind of thing. We just don't know. Or maybe they're so rich they just like employing people to do stuff that doesn't matter. Which is what I would do.
I don't know.
Because apparently I'm a sociopath.
I have many problems with the AI and the control schemes in this film, and what's legal as well, like, in terms of the fighting. Like it's when you get to the end of this film, like the climax of this film is you've got this little underdog robot fighting the big robot, and at some point the little underdog robot loses its primary form of like input for control, and therefore the only way to control it now is with this thing's shadow mode. And so the climax of the film is, you know, the old retired boxer coming out of retirement effectively and virtually boxing this bigger, better robot. And
it's a brilliantly terrible film.
And when you see that, you just go, why is that not what all of the control schemes are? Why on earth are any of these robots controlled with anything other than this magical shadow mode that seems to work through some kind of crazy X-ray vision that can see through robots but not through humans?
And doesn't have to be looking in the same direction as where the controller is.
It's just, yeah, that whole thing bothers me so much. But like, why is that not what everyone's doing? Why is it not shadow boxing with big robots?
Who's to say that after Atom has this fight against Zeus, that doesn't become the norm?
But like, I just don't understand the universe that leads to it not being the norm in the first place.
Well, what if, for example, someone tried that out, wasn't a very good boxer, it failed, so everybody wrote it off?
Well, I mean, if this is replacing boxing, and you go, I've built a robot that can shadow someone perfectly with no latency, I'm going to try and do a fight, why would you not get, you know, one of the professional boxers that you're trying to put out of a job to do the shadow boxing? Why would you not do that?
I'm wondering if in-universe audiences saw that and went, this isn't far enough removed from normal boxing.
I mean, the only reason I could ever come up with was that it was illegal, that it wasn't allowed, that it had to be some kind of remote control. But then that's obviously completely shattered by the fact that the climax of the film is shadow boxing. It's just silly.
I can only assume that it went out of fashion.
Yeah, that's the only.
It's interesting how within anything like this, conventional wisdom kind of shifts from this is the way to do things to this is the new way to do things. The old way is dead.
You've just summed up software development perfectly.
There we are. Real Steel is basically a film about software development.
Software development. Every 6 months there's a new thing and everyone should use it. I say software, that's more JavaScript than it is software development in general.
How would you know?
How do I know? Because I am a software developer. Did you not know that?
I did not know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll I'm a software developer. Just so you know. I don't know if anyone else finds that funny other than us.
I wonder if I care. I don't. Sometimes you have to make jokes that are just for you. So yeah, back to Real Steel. The biggest issue I have with it is that they're trying to simulate human boxing at all. Why not just make the robots and make them better than humans? So, for example, it seems as though they have in some way programmed in a response where robots are stunned after being hit in the head. Which then makes me wonder, have they sort of factored in other weak spots? Is there, for example, in the world of Real Steel, the equivalent of a liver punch that will just put a robot down?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, the universe, it's not explored well enough. What we need is we need a follow-up film that goes into great detail on all of these things.
I believe they were planning a Real Steel 2 and it never happened.
Oh.
Get on Kickstarter, boys. We can do this.
Oh, God. No, more original films. No more sequels. No more reboots.
But Real Steel. Have you watched Pacific Rim 2?
I have not.
Then you're not part of the problem. Damn it.
You have to go through some other films that I may have watched sequels to.
No. It's already getting late. No. The other big question I have about these things is kind of the same as Pacific Rim. Why not put all the control systems that are important on the back and just protect everything really well and really let them go at each other? Let them have swords. Why not have swords? That seems like it would be better.
It's funny because I feel like that was like the premise of what he was explaining at some point, was that people wanted no holds barred fights, right? They wanted like fights that went the distance, but I guess other than beheading, I guess we don't really see that very much.
Not really, no. I mean, really, the worst damage done to a robot is done by a bull.
Yeah.
Although there is one machine that in a trailer for the Zeus film, for the Zeus fight, seems to get its head just pancaked, which is pretty brutal. But again, why is all the important stuff in the head? It doesn't make sense from a design standpoint.
I mean, if you're going to go all out with these things, surely you would sort of just do no time limits on it as well. Well, maybe not no time limits, but like a much longer time limit, rather than having this be 5. I mean, I guess it's just because it's mirroring boxing, isn't it? We're going to have 5 rounds of however many minutes, 2 minutes, or whatever it is.
3. I watch more MMA than boxing, really. I don't watch much of either, but I think boxing is kind of stupid. Boxing is a weird agreement that we're going to hurt each other, but only in a specific way, because apparently that makes us gentlemen.
Is it legal for a robot to hit their opponent's legs?
Well, in the street fights, obviously anything goes. We do see Zeus throwing at him at some point.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be allowed in boxing.
So they've already gone beyond the rules of boxing, yeah. So why not have a 10-minute long fight with swords?
Yep. We see punches to the back of the head as well, which wouldn't be allowed.
Are you allowed to pin people in the corner for that long, or would the sort of person come in and break it up? Because I know there's like
sort of.
I'm not very familiar with boxing, but I know there's like rules about locking with an opponent, and if you sort of stay locked for too long, they'll come and pull you apart.
Yeah, so if 2 people do what's called clinching, which is basically hugging each other but more manly, then that gets broken back up and the fight is sort of continued from a couple of steps apart to get the fight going again. Having someone up against the ropes is tricky. If a fighter is defending themselves correctly, i.e. they've still got the ability to get their guard up and not be hit in the face repeatedly, they're usually left to their own devices. If a referee does intervene, it's usually to declare them the loser.
Okay.
Because they're no longer defending themselves and will just end up brain damage if they let it go on.
I mean, because there was a lot of like screaming at Atom to get its arms up. So I feel like in a normal boxing game, based on what you've just said, in normal human boxing, that would be a fight over situation because it was pinned in the corner for ages.
Which would be the appeal of robot boxing, because you don't have to worry about brain damage to a robot. You can just let every fight end in a knockout. Whereas most boxing fights are waved off by the referee for a technical knockout rather than someone actually being knocked out. You know, it is just the referee or a doctor saying it is no longer safe for this person to keep getting hit in the head.
So, my next question, or my first question to you, is Atom self-aware?
You see, I only went as far as wondering if these robots have reflexes, because it's heavily implied that they do. And Atom is almost shown to have emotion. Now, considering that that emotion wouldn't be programmed into a robot, the job of which is to get hit as a training exercise, it would make sense that that means he might well be self-aware.
So it's interesting because, like, I don't think the thing that made me ask the question, is that thing self-aware, was when it was looking at a mirror, and I was wondering if it was going to get itself in a loop where it was going to try and shadow itself.
I was hoping that.
That's what I was expecting to happen in that scene, but it didn't happen. But like, I don't think they ever actually emote with. I think they're quite careful about never emoting with the face or the body. It's always mirroring someone, and I think they're very. The filmmakers have been quite clever, I think, in sort of putting the robot in situations where basically everyone will naturally project onto that robot, and it's quite a. It's obviously it's like a blank. The face of it is, I think, quite intentionally blank and like innocent looking. So I think to encourage you to sort of project onto it, and it's got like what I think are like damage marks on its grill thing over its face, but they're in such a way that they look a little bit like a mouth and a nose, but I don't think they are a mouth and a nose. So I think it's been very clever to sort of make you ask that question, but without ever actually doing something over the top in the film. Like there's never it's not like there's a secret. Oh, it moves, and I guess in other films you can sort of imagine if they wanted you to sort of question whether or not the robot was self-aware, they might have it sort of like do secret movements when no humans were looking. But I don't think they ever do that. I think they're quite careful not to do that, but they still manage to make me, at least, ask that question. I think it's interesting.
I wonder if maybe I'm getting this idea of emotion less from expression and more from the weird sounds it seems to make. Which, again, there's no reason for it to be made to make.
I mean, I think the sounds it makes are just kind of the sounds of, like, machinery, aren't they? Like, I don't think it's not like it's got some voice box in there or like a little speaker that's making little, like, noises. I think it's sort of like...
That is the kind of sound it makes, though. And it's almost like a whale noise.
But that could be like the sound of like hydraulics sort of relaxing or shifting, or like air pressure being released and stuff like that. Like I think they're all noises that you would expect a machine to make. I think they're well timed by the filmmakers to make you question it.
My interpretation is that it is in some way communicating, but I'm also aware that that is a stretch within the canon. I can't really justify it beyond that. That's just the way I read it when it happened.
I think they're just trying to make you feel like presumably the kid feels, which is that the robot is in some way alive, right? When I think in universe it isn't. I think it's just very well presented to make you ask the question.
I think the other thing that gives that impression is that it does essentially learn as the film goes on, in that it is upgraded to be more capable, and that gives the impression of learning. And it's also being compared to a machine which is supposed to learn. Although it's weird that the genuinely intelligent machine is never presented as potentially being in any way self-aware or living.
I was quite let down, I think, when we sort of saw Zeus fight the first time, because it was sort of like presented as... Because of the way it was presented as like the only robot that had any form of AI, I was expecting it to be fundamentally different in some way. I was expecting it to fight in a different way, and it just sort of didn't. It felt like it did all the same... It didn't seem like it was a challenge for the guys piloting Atom to sort of like outsmart Zeus. It's like Zeus was winning through being just a bigger, stronger robot. I feel like a robot that size without AI would have been exactly the same outcome. There was never a point where it was sort of like when like Hugh Jackman's character started sort of like shadow boxing with the thing. I thought that'd be interesting, right? Where it's sort of like, oh, now he's, surely we're going to see Zeus spotting the same kind of like hitch in the arm thing that was spotted earlier by the humans. I was expecting to see that kind of thing, and we never sort of did. It didn't feel like it was in any way different to other robots.
Absolutely, particularly on the point of pure strength. We see a couple of times that it seems to win fights in a one-hit knockout just by being better built. I think when they talk about AI, I'm not sure it's what we would now call AI. I think it's almost more a sort of machine learning style thing. In fact, maybe not even that. What they like to say is that it's running through all the potential permutations and choosing an option, which really, to me, says massive processing power rather than intelligence.
Yeah, so you reckon it's more like a chess-playing robot than
Yeah.
a self-driving car type thing?
It's more supercomputer than it is AI. It just happens to be packaged in an anthropomorphized form and utilized for the world-changing use of boxing.
Yeah, that makes sense as an in-universe explanation. I still felt let down though, like the way the film sold it to me, or the way I interpreted it. Maybe this was my problem with unmanaged expectations, but I don't know. I was expecting to see a bit more out of the machine learning part of that robot.
I also don't know how I feel about this idea of AI being used as a villainous trait.
I mean, that's just such a trope now, isn't it? I mean, I was fully expecting that robot to go rogue at the end of a fight when the bell went at some point. I was fully expecting it to ignore the bell at some point in this fight. I was expecting this robot to get annoyed about the fact that it was losing to this tiny robot. That's part of what I was expecting out of those fights at the end, and it never happened. It was a very, very well behaved AI, which is unusual, I think, for having AI as the bad guy in a film.
True. I suppose in a sense the bad guy is more, these are the money men. These are the people ruining the sport by making it impossible for the little guy to succeed, and then the little guy kind of succeeds. So yeah, maybe I've slightly misread that. I don't know. I'll have to watch it a sixth or seventh time. Did you ever watch, or have you seen clips of Robot Combat League?
No.
So this was an American TV program produced for Sci-Fi or something like that, I think, in the early 2000s, which was essentially Real Steel, but real. And they had humans in exosuits boxing, and that was then mirrored by these real... I was going to say robots, that's not at all true. Basically puppets that did the exact same thing, and instead of walking forwards or backwards, were just on rails. And when they would punch each other, there would be random pyro going off. And it is by far the most disappointing thing I have ever seen.
Is it more disappointing than the MegaBots thing?
Yes. Somehow, yes.
This film is almost like what you wanted MegaBots to be.
That is a very good point.
MegaBots went out of business, I think, didn't they? They ran out of money recently.
They're running out of money. They've laid basically everybody off, and now the last remaining guy, in a pitiful attempt to remain relevant, is basically going to vlog the liquidation of the company by the looks of it. That's my reading of it. That may be biased because I don't like the MegaBots thing anymore. I feel like they took people's money and then used it to actively disappoint those people. I don't think that's a very good business model. I don't think that's a very good model for being a nice person. So I'm quite happy to see them fail. And I'm aware that, you know, people are losing their jobs out of this. It's not a nice thing, but as a company, I think the writing was on the wall for a very long time. And I'm glad that it's failed now rather than failing when even more of people's money have been put into it.
Yeah. Have you seen what Colin Furze is building?
No, I haven't looked at his stuff for a while, actually.
He's building a Hulkbuster suit. So I've seen he's working on it with James Bruton, who's another YouTuber who's worth checking out. So James has built Hulkbuster suits as cosplay things in the past with a lot of 3D printing and clever gadgets in there and stuff. But Colin Furze he's building like an actual like steel thing that is like he's not intending to make the thing walk. I think he sort of said that's beyond his time, budget, and skill level. But he's built like proper like scary hydraulic legs and stuff so far on his that he's published anyway. But he's planning to sort of have this huge Hulkbuster suit. I would love to see what he could do if he built a robot.
If you gave him $2.5 million, which is what that MegaBots thing cost, which is ridiculous. I don't know how they've done that, but that's apparently what they spent on it. You gave him that kind of money, he'd have an army of the things going.
I reckon you could give him significant, like orders of magnitude less money than that, and he would produce something at least on par with it, I think. If nothing else, he would make very entertaining videos about building it.
Yeah, and I was saying pretty much ever since the reboot of Robot Wars, really, that it would be really great for him to enter, because he'd bring an audience with him.
Yeah, definitely.
He'd produce really good stuff around it, and even if he didn't build something successful or effective, he'd build something interesting.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are large parts of it that are probably out of his sort of sphere of knowledge, and that's absolutely fine. That's why you get other people on board. But just his approach to making stuff would have been a real asset, I think.
Another person who I'd like to see build a robot for like some kind of combat robotics thing would be Simone Giertz, who does...
Yes, and bloody well done for actually being one of the people that pronounces that vaguely correctly.
I try to get
my
people's
mouth
names
isn't
right.
capable of making the noises, but that sounded good.
Because she also makes very entertaining videos, and I mean, so the reason I think, because this is weird for me to say, because the robots that she'd build would be rubbish, but I think it'd be rubbish in a funny way to me, because everything else that she's built is rubbish in a funny way. So.
And it would be built badly well. It would be a flawed design executed well.
Yeah, which is I think that would be quite funny.
Dare I say it? Equivalent to a Series 8 robot. Sorry, Series 9 robot.
You can say something if you want. I mean, it might get cut.
Well, in that case, I might as well just not say it then.
Well, no, because if you don't say it, it definitely won't be in. But if you do say it, it might be in.
But it won't, though, will it? Fairly jish. There you go. Maybe that's funny enough to keep now.
Maybe.
The weird ongoing game between me and you to get things in the show. But no, if it's... I don't know if this is a slight spoiler, but Simone was a guest judge or a proper judge at BattleBots.
Ooh, I did not know that. Cool.
No, William Osman also posted a few Instagram videos from behind the scenes there, so I don't know if he was doing stuff with a team or what, but he's someone I'm very happy to see there as well.
Cool.
Any tech people that I already know for other things I want to see make robots, basically. I've just realised I should bring up my final criticism of Real Steel. Judging by the way that Atom had been buried for ages in a muddy, rainy scrap heap and didn't have any rust on him, there is absolutely no way that these things are really steel.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/28. And there you can find links to all the things we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your favourite film involving combat robots.